Hello and welcome to, or welcome back to, TheSimplyCa. My name is Alana, and on this channel you are going to find both human design influenced coaching videos as well as yoga videos. Today, as part of the human design series, we are going to get into the centers, what it means to have defined versus undefined. If you are enjoying this content, go ahead, click on that subscribe button, as well as the notification bell to be notified every time I post a new video. We're going to break up the centers videos into at least 2 parts. Today we're going to go over the high-level overview of what it means to be defined or undefined, what that looks like in your chart, as well as the motor centers. In the next video, we will be taking a look at the rest of the centers. Definition is going to show up as something that is showing in color in your chart. Don't worry about what color it is, whether it be a center, a gate, or a channel. Anything that is consistent in your energy is going to show up in a color. This means that you can count on knowing the shadow as well as the wisdom of that definition. Everything that is white in your chart is undefined, which means that you are open to experience that area through other people and their experiences of that area. It also means that you are more empathetic in those places, in that you can step into somebody else's experience, and it means that you are open to the conditioning of others around you in those undefined areas. Just like with everything else in human design, there isn't a good or a bad. It's about awareness. It's about understanding yourself as well as understanding the differences of others a little bit better. So none of this is a sentence, none of this is bad or amazing and good. Take it for an experience and take it for an experiment to get to know yourself and those around you a little bit better. Before we jump into the motor centers, I want to give you a small example from my personal experience around definition and being undefined, as well as how that creates a experience that is not exactly true for me when I'm by myself. So I have an open emotional solar plexus, and my mom is defined in her solar plexus, which means that my mom has a consistent emotional wave that she can work with. And I am neutral when it comes to emotions when I'm on my own. I don't experience an emotional wave when I'm in my own energy. Growing up, I thought that I was a crazy emotional person, not because my mom has crazy emotions, but because I was amplifying whatever emotional wave she was on. And because it wasn't my emotional wave, I didn't have that personal connection and that personal knowing of the emotional wave. Then I moved away to go to university, and all of a sudden I thought I was broken because I was no longer having these natural, what I thought were natural emotions. And all of a sudden I wasn't emotional anymore. And I was so confused for years until I learned about human design, and I saw my mother and my charts, and I realized that naturally I'm actually neutral when it comes to emotions, when I'm in my own energy. And when I'm around my mom, and especially growing up, I got to experience a vast array of emotions that were intensified and amplified because they were so connected to my mom's emotional solar plexus. And again, I'm sharing this story to illustrate how it's not right or wrong or good or bad to have definition or to be open. this was an experience that I got to have, and now I get to have language and verbiage around emotions. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that illustrates a little bit more about how being defined or undefined isn't good or bad. It's an experience that we get to have, and the better that we know ourselves and those around us, the more information we have to acknowledge what is truly ours and what we are experiencing through other people. Okay. Let's get into the motor centers. And normally we go from the bottom up, but I felt it was a little bit weird to just sort of like stop talking about one of the centers partway through the video and then cut it into the next video. But in the attempt to keep these videos in more bite-sized pieces, I thought that it would be best if we slice and dice how we're talking about the centers. So the motor centers are going to be our first grouping, and then in the next video, posted next week, we're going to be talking about the rest of the centers. The very first center that we are going to talk about is the root center. It is the first chakra, and it governs the adrenals. There are two pressure centers at the bottom and at the top of the human design chart. So the root is both a motor center as well as a pressure center, which sort of makes sense, especially when you think about in yoga, we've got the locks at the top and at the bottom. So this is the bottom root lock in the chakra system, and it also pulls energy up from the earth. And so when people have this center defined, it fuels energy up into the body to create pressure to get things done. With definition in this root center, the highest expression is that it grounds energy, it trusts life, and it pulls energy up into the body to take action and to get things done. Now, the shadow expression of having a defined root center is always feeling like there's more to be done and feeling like there's a timeline that you're not keeping up to. When the root center is undefined, the wisdom in it is learning to become aware of the pressure around you to achieve and to get things done, and to recognize that that pressure is external to you. The question to ask yourself with an undefined root center is, am I trying to get this done in order to rid myself of this pressure that I'm feeling? Because that's not going to work. The shadow of the undefined root center is consistently amplifying and placing pressure on yourself unconsciously to do and achieve and cross things off, and pushing yourself to internalize that pressure that you're experiencing through others around you. The second motor center is the emotional solar plexus, which is also an awareness of emotions. The solar plexus physically governs the kidneys, the pancreas, and the bladder. Energetically, it governs the emotions. When the solar plexus is defined, the highest expression is an awareness of your own emotional wave and making decisions when you're feeling emotionally neutral, not on a high, not on a low, and not when you're feeling a buildup of emotions. You want to make sure, as we talked about in the authorities video, linked in the description box below, that when you are trying to make a decision, if you have a defined emotional solar plexus, you're doing that in that neutral place. Now, the shadow of a defined emotional solar plexus is unawareness and detachment from your emotions, feeling as if you are all over the place, making decisions when you are on a peak or a valley or in the experience of the buildup of your emotions. The wisdom in the undefined solar plexus is empathy towards others' emotions. Asking yourself the question, is this my emotion that I'm experiencing, can be really helpful for people who have an undefined solar plexus. Now, the shadow side of an undefined solar plexus is not knowing that you're experiencing other people's emotions and feeling thrown all over the place and feeling emotional highs and emotional lows and not knowing what to do with them because you don't have that internalized experience of the emotional wave and you're just getting thrown around by other people's emotions. And then we get to the sacral motor center. Physically, the sacral center is connected to the gut as well as the reproductive organs. Energetically, the sacral is creativity and desire. When the sacral is defined, the highest expression is that it generates a consistent supply of energy when creativity or desire is peaked. A lit up defined sacral also creates and generates energy for everyone else in the aura of that generator or manifesting generator. The shadow side is the not self theme or the cue that you are off track of the generators and the manifesting generators, and that is frustration. The sacral responds with frustration when it is doing things that it does not want to be doing or that are not what it desires to be doing. The wisdom of the undefined sacral is an awareness of the desire level and energy of others, as well as being lit up when in the presence of a generating generator or manifesting generator. The question for an undefined sacral center to ask themselves is, am I trying to keep up in the generator and manifesting generator world? The shadow side of the undefined sacral center is overdoing it and exerting more energy than you have when you're in the presence of generators and manifesting generators. It's also expecting yourself to maintain that level of production when you're not around generators and manifesting generators. And it can feel like this energy is a little bit manic if you don't have a defined sacral and you're unaware of taking on other people's energy. Because when you get in that space with generators and manifesting generators, sometimes there's a neediness that comes through about trying to soak up and utilize all that energy when really it's not there for you. How do I say this? You get to use it when it's available, but don't expect yourself to be able to maintain that heightened energy when you're outside of the space of generators and manifesting generators. And the final motor center that we're going to be talking about is the ego center. And I do want to remind you that the ego in human design is the will. It's not the ego or the death of the ego that we talk about in yoga or in westernized philosophy. This is the willpower to see something through to completion, which is why it is also a motor center. So physically, the ego center is connected to the stomach, the gallbladder, and the thymus. And energetically, it's connected to willpower and motivation. When the ego is defined, the highest expression of it is to have and to notice having strong and consistent willpower and motivation to see things through. It also means that you will be likely to maintain promises and commitments that are made when they are correct for you. So even if you have a defined ego, but it's not your authority, still make sure that you are running past commitments and decisions through your ego. Do I have the willpower? Do I have the what's in it for me to get this done and to see this through? Now, the shadow expression of a defined ego can be seen as, or experienced as, stubbornness and inflexibility. The defined ego can have issues seeing commitments through when they are not made in accordance with their energy. So again, making sure that if you have a defined ego, you are running past commitments and promises through that defined ego lens. The ego center is connected to self-worth. So the shadow side of an undefined ego is the concern or the underlying belief that you are not worthy. And the ego center is only defined in a small portion of the population. So it's not surprising that not feeling worthy is one of the top concerns and top fears of many people, which means that the wisdom in an undefined ego is the knowingness that you are worthy because you are. Additionally, allow yourself the freedom and the flexibility to have a wavering willpower. The question for the undefined ego center is, am I trying to prove my worth? And finally, the shadow side of the undefined ego is feeling the pressure to prove or to improve constantly. The other aspect of the shadow side is making commitments and promises based off of your willpower to achieve versus utilizing your authority for making commitments and decisions. Okay, my friends, that wraps up the motor centers. These are all the energy generating centers inside of the human design chart. In the next video, we are going to be talking about the rest of the energy centers with their defined and undefined shadows and wisdoms and highest expressions. My intention for sharing this content is to encourage you to dive a little bit deeper into who you are, what you know to be true for yourself, and to acknowledge your differences and the differences in the people around you. In this world, we need each and every one of us to show up in our highest expression, knowing ourselves and bringing our true gifts to the rest of the world. If you are enjoying this content, go ahead, click that thumbs up button. It really actually does help in the algorithm, so I'm told, as well as the subscribe button and the notification bell. I also want to comment that I am doing these human design videos as a foundation, and then we will be applying human design in how I use it for coaching people, because it is a true gift to know yourself and to make decisions and follow your energy instead of trying to put yourself into somebody else's box. So these are all foundational videos, and then we'll get into a little bit more meat. If you have questions, if you are curious, if you have a situation that's happening in your world that you would love to see through the lens of human design coaching, go ahead and leave a comment down below in the description box or send me a DM on Instagram. Okay, that's everything for today, my loves. Thank you so much for joining. Click on those notification bells and subscriptions and all the stuff, and I will see you in the next video.